So yeah, my name's Steve Ryan. I'm from the Glenelg Hopkins CMA Management Authority. I'm a water health planner, and I'm here today looking at drought refuges, a project that we're running to look at the importance of drought refuges in the Glenelg River and how we can actually protect them. So we're scoping out a few sites here to look to remove carp from some of these drought refuges. Carp are invasive species, as many people know, but they're also pretty new in the Glenelg River. So the drought refuge is a really important place for native fish to exist while the droughts are going on. So it's somewhere it's either got some inflow coming in it from other sort of tributaries, or it could be groundwater dependent or groundwater fed. Very important because it's probably sometimes the only places in the river that there is actually water, and therefore the only place where fish can actually survive. Yeah, so it's very important to remove invasive species like carp out of the river system, out of these drought refuges, so they're not competing directly with native fish, but also making conditions adverse to native fish, which carp sometimes do through their feeding and through their just their natural behaviour. We've noticed through some of the work we've done with SARDI, which is the South Australian Aquatic Research Division, where we've found that at certain times of year carp gather in larger numbers on the river, and then to other parts of the year. So for instance, when it's colder they seem to gather in larger numbers, but when it's warmer they'll spread out. So at the moment we've been up here chasing carp in these refuge holes, and we've sort of struggled to find where they actually are located, but it's more that they've spread out and they're not actually in discrete areas. On the Glenelg River, we first noticed carp in the actual river itself in 2001. Before that, there's been a lot of carp in Rocklands Reservoir, which is at the top of the Glenelg. It's also where we also get a lot of our environmental water from, and also some of our only flow we get in the river at different times of year. So it's very important to make sure that when we send flow down that we can exclude carp. So we've got a set of carp screens on Rocklands Reservoir, which actually stops carp getting into the river. They haven't really got a foothold here yet. We've seen that the numbers are low. We've also seen that they spawn on large events like flooding events, that when carp can move into wetlands and actually do what they do best, is actually spawn on wetlands and create lots of baby carp. So one of our parts of our job is actually removing those carp before they have a chance to do that. So we're pinpointing places on the river that we've figured out where they tend to congregate. It's called hotspot technology, or Judas carp, where we tag fish and we figure out where they are and then go in and remove fish at the right time of year. So the right time of year in the Glenelg River is around May, and where they actually congregate on larger numbers on discrete snags, and we can actually remove them in large quantities. So yeah, drought refuge in the Glenelg River is not just about having water, it's also having the connectivity between different types of habitats. So as you can see again in the background, there's some rice ribbonweed here, but it also connects to other types of emergent reeds like the phragmites in the background, and then that connects to a snag. So fish use that sort of as like we would with a highway. We'd stop over in different places, and fish do exactly the same thing, where they would use these different habitats as they travel up the river. So we're seeing estuary perch and tupong moving through these systems and using these habitats as part of their journey. And they'll hide away there during the day and then move a bit at night, or vice versa, depending on the species and what they're up to. So protecting these little discrete areas where we've got lots of habitat and good water quality is very important. So removing carp, having good flow in the river is very important for these species that are moving up from the estuary into these freshwater environments. The other issue is we had to figure out what was the best technique to removing carp in the river. The Glenelg River is a series of pools and runs, so therefore we had very limited opportunity to remove them by netting and other means. So what we figured that electrofishing was the most cost-effective way of doing that, and also the best way of doing it. So we target those cooler months when fish are congregating, and we target the pools where they actually congregate in. Then we can go in with the electrofisher and actually remove them in quite large numbers. We're also using a variety of methods to identify where the spawning hotspots are, or where they are actually where carp are actually spawning in the river. We're using larval nets and drift nets to collect more information about larvae in the river as well. And as part of a project we're running with Deakin University and Austral Research, that is starting to open up some of how they've been successful in where they've been spawning in the river, which we haven't seen much success in the past. It seems to be very limited spawning in the river, and we're trying to figure out why that is. Yeah, the reason why we don't think there is good spawning in the river is to do with a few issues. One, it's probably habitat related. They need large wetlands and lots of standing vegetation in the river or in the wetlands. Their eggs are actually sticky and they have to actually attach to vegetation. If you don't have the wetlands with that vegetation in it, they don't successfully spawn or don't successfully have young make it through. So the important thing about when protecting drought refuge is trying to remove any invasive species from them that will actually either impact their native species, like your pygmy perches. We've got 3 variety of pygmy perches, for instance, which would be impacted by carp, but also other fish that have been introduced to the system. They directly target these pygmy perches for either a food source, but also carp. What they do is actually make conditions better for themselves, not for native fish. So we see that the more carp we have in the system, the reduced amount of natives we have. And it's important to protect these species. It's the only place, for instance, in the world where 3 species of pygmy perch occurred in a river system. So we've got to protect these places because this is the only place that they actually are. Yeah, so the method of feeding for carp is that they pull in sediment from the bottom of the river and actually release it back into the water column. There's a big cloud of mud, pretty much. And that does a lot of things for native fish. It reduces the far how they can see, for instance, but also it mobilises nutrients and makes blue-green algae more prevalent and actually turns the water into something that native fish don't want to live in.